Now let's take a look at the story that we've been focusing on from the very beginning, the fate of Indians in Mosul. 39 abducted Indians have been held captive for the past 3 years. And as hope was waning days after the liberation of the second largest city of Iraq, news reached the families of these abducted Indians that they may be in a town called Baidush, which is about 30 kilometers from Mosul. WION's Daniele Pagani traveled to Baidush to bring you this ground report.
It takes nearly 2 hours from the east side of Mosul to the town of Baidush. According to India's External Affairs Minister Sushma Swaraj, it is to Baidush that the 39 Indians missing in Iraq may have been taken by the Islamic State. Baidush witnessed fierce battles. Iraq's Emergency Response Division had to fight house by house before reconquering it. Iraqi intelligence told the Indian government that the 39 missing Indians were brought to the town's jail.
So this is the road which leads to the Syrian border, basically 100 kilometers. So down to this road you'll meet the Syrian border. And here, what we can see, all this smashed building, this grounded area which is right here, a couple of 100 meters at my left, was the jail of Baidush. The formal jail of Baidush. This was a place which was used by the Islamic State to imprison many people, perhaps to torture them. And now it's completely destroyed. There is nothing anymore we can see. It looks like a flatland. One even has to struggle to find out the structure of the city. And right behind there, those houses we see far away, there are some trees, there is a big cement factory where a huge battle was going on. That's Baidush. That's the village, 16 kilometers from Mosul, where the Indian government got intelligence from the Iraqi government saying that perhaps the 39 Indians were brought there. There is currently no military operation ongoing in the village of Baidush. There is also a military base where US troops are staying along with the Iraqi troops.
It is to this jail located in the middle of the desert close to Syria that the terrorist organization is reported to have brought many foreigners and Iraqi prisoners.
Nearly nothing remains of the jail. The Islamic State used this jail in order to imprison all the citizens who were not abiding by their law, and perhaps what we know is that at a certain point of time the 39 Indian workers were brought inside these.
The town of Baidush is an off-limits area for the media, but it is totally liberated and government forces are in full control of it. This despite the Iraqi government said to the Indian government that Baidush is war-torn and therefore not accessible.
Access to the village of Baidush right now for the media is restricted by the Iraqi army. The Iraqi army is in full control of Baidush. Since a long time they liberated it. There is no ongoing fighting inside the village of Baidush. So perhaps the problem of access is because Baidush contains a major military base, and it is from there that the operation to reconquer the city of Tal Afar, still under control of the Islamic State, will start.
An officer of the Iraqi army spoke to us on condition of anonymity about the situation of Baidush.
What is the situation right now in Baidush?
We have conducted a difficult operation in Baidush at least 2 months back, and since then the city is safe. The Iraqi army is in total control in Baidush. There is a major military base where the Emergency Response Division is currently located.
The border to Syria is closed, and this might give hope to the families of the 39 Indian workers who disappeared. But the Islamic State may have also taken them to Syria to put them to work for the terror group.
Right now, the area perhaps could be accessible when it comes to try to find out where the 39 Indians. Currently, the media are not allowed to go there, perhaps because of the American base and because the small village of Baidush will be from where the operation to reconquer the city of Tal Afar, which is still controlled by the Islamic State, will start. Daniele Pagani and video journalist Martin Aim on the border with Syria, village of Baidush, Iraq, for WION.
And Daniele Pagani is joining us live this evening from Erbil. Good evening, Daniele. The families here in India have been told that their loved ones might be alive and there is still a chance that they will return home safe and sound. How hopeful should they be?
Very hard for me to say. If I have to go by the last news that the Indian government released, which is that perhaps the families were to be found in Baidush or in the jail of Baidush. Unfortunately, I have to say that if this is the case, if this is truly the case, it's perhaps not possible. The village of Baidush is completely controlled by the Iraqi army. They have access everywhere. I spoke with the officer who actually controls all the checkpoint and oversees the operation in Baidush, and he told me that when they reached Baidush, there was no civilian there except a very small handful of sheep keepers who managed to stay there throughout the war. The jail is completely destroyed. It's even difficult to understand how big the structure was. I mean, the area is a desertic area, it's completely flat. The only hope is that Baidush is 95, 97 kilometers from the Indian border, and many Islamic State fighters did actually run into Syria when the operation to reconquer the city of Mosul were not turning into when they were being defeated in Mosul. Therefore, there is still hope that these 39 Indians might be in Syria. Perhaps the Islamic State is still using them as laborers for whatever work they need. But if we hope that these 39 Indians can be found alive in Baidush, well, that is not possible.
So where did this first report come in? Who said that they might be there? Did someone see them there? Is there a solid lead, or is this still a wild goose chase?
We don't know. What we know is that the Iraqi intelligence, quoting a very high-profile source within the government, told the Indian government that in Baidush, it could be the case that the 39 Indians are perhaps in Baidush, in the jail of Baidush. I would say that this information, unfortunately, was perhaps inaccurate because it's impossible that these 39 Indians are in Baidush right now. The Iraqi government also restricted access to the Indian government to the village of Baidush, saying that there was fighting going on. And today I was less than a kilometer from Baidush. I wasn't allowed access, but not because it's dangerous. I wasn't allowed access because there are ongoing operations. They are preparing to attack Tal Afar, which is 50 kilometers from there. Therefore, they are amassing tanks and all the weapons they need, and they don't want the media to show that. Of course, you don't want to show to your enemy how you're preparing to attack it. But the village is absolutely under Iraqi government control. There is no fighting going there, and perhaps the Indian government could call back the Iraqi government and insist a little bit more to have access to the village of Baidush to try to understand a little bit better what actually is going on.
Do we know why the Iraqi government is not giving anyone access to this region? And what else have you learned about this Baidush jail? We understand that people from many nationalities at one point were being held there.
Yes, let's start from the Baidush jail. The Baidush jail, unfortunately, is a place rich of sadness and torture. The Islamic State used to jail their people for 2 years, all the people who were either foreigners caught during their advance, or people who did not abide by their very strict law. Also, Iraqi soldiers who got captured during the offensive or former police members got detained there. Unfortunately, none of them has been found in the jail when the Iraqi army reached the jail of Baidush, because the jail has been grounded by jet fighters. It has been grounded and destroyed, and it was anyway empty when this happened. When it comes to understanding why the Iraqi government did not provide exact information to the Indian government, we have to understand that perhaps this was not made out of the willingness to not be helpful. But the Iraqi government is faced with an enormous challenge. They have an entire city which needs to be completely rebuilt. The western part of the city of Mosul, where hundreds of thousands of people were living, is completely destroyed. There are tens of thousands of people missing, perhaps alive underneath the rubble, perhaps not. The economy of the city is completely destroyed. The last figure which was on the table of the Iraqi government for the reconstruction is $100 billion US dollars. So perhaps due to the enormous challenge that they need to face, they cannot control every single information that they receive. So inaccuracy was there, but I am assuming, because I did not speak with the Iraqi government, it is not possible to reach such high levels of the Iraqi intelligence right now to ask them the reason for this.
Understandably. In the meantime, let's also discuss the situation elsewhere, as you're saying that many challenges ahead for the Iraqi administration and for the international community as well that is helping in rebuilding this region. Does the exodus still continue more than a week after the ISIS was quote-unquote defeated?
Well, today, throughout the day that I spent in the city of Mosul, I heard no sign of gunfighting. So I can sense that the operation is, if not completely over, very near to the full end. What we know is that there are still members of the Islamic State in the city, in the western part of the city of Mosul, hiding, but perhaps they have no more ammunition, no more weapons. They have also been suffering from severe starvation since 7 months, so perhaps they are not willing to fight anymore. And anyway, yesterday, for instance, I also yesterday was in Mosul, in the old city of Mosul, in the western part. There was at least, I would say minimum 20 airstrikes during the hours when I was there. So I am imagining that this is the very final last stage of the battle. When it comes to other cities, for instance, the city of Hawija, and for instance, the city of Tal Afar, which is very close to the village of Badoush, it's 50 kilometers from the village of Badoush. Well, these two cities are still under Islamic State control. And today, speaking with members of the emergency response division, they told me that they are pretty worried because these two towns are full of Islamic State foreign fighters, which are the most dangerous because they know they cannot go back to their country. So the only way out for them is to die fighting.
Daniele, I'm going to request you to stay with us, and we want to show our viewers two sets of images. And let me warn you at the very outset, some of these pictures could be disturbing. The first video purports to show Iraqi security forces throwing an Islamic State fighter off a cliff in Mosul and then shooting him for good measure. It's the new face of a battered Mosul. As the fighting abates and survivors of so many months of conflict emerge from the ruins, they're coming face to face with a new horror. Vengeful Iraqi soldiers and militia targeting those who they suspect are Islamic State fighters. Eyewitnesses have reported seeing bodies floating down the Tigris River. Arms usually bound behind their backs, eyes blindfolded, bearing gunshots to the chest or the head. The suspicion is that much of the killing could be the work of the popular mobilization units, basically armed Shia groups that are scouring through the rubble, picking up young, male, mainly Sunni survivors, since Mosul is a predominantly Sunni city. The sense is that they were willing collaborators of the Islamic State, murdering Shias, Yazidis and Christians. The Sunnis may have fallen for the anti-Shia sectarianism of the Islamic State or joined them, driven by the need to survive and take care of their families. Police say that they have no idea who the dead are. There is nothing to identify them by. Nor does anybody come forward to claim the bodies. Just how many bodies have been recovered is not clear at this point. It seems nobody is counting and nobody wants to know. And this is probably what is driving the killings of Islamic State fighters. A steady stream of reports over the last 2 years of atrocities committed by the Islamic State, including burnings, beheadings, mass executions, and the enslaving of captured Yazidi women. In May, there came reports that as many as 231 Iraqi civilians were killed by Islamic State as they sought to flee to safety towards government lines. Perhaps the most infamous was the killing of an estimated 1,566 Air Force cadets in a camp in the city of Tikrit. The Shia and Christian cadets were separated from the Sunni, taken out and shot at. Some who were found wearing Air Force uniforms beneath civilian garb were beaten to death with rifle butts. Add to that, civilians killed in coalition airstrikes on Mosul. One such strike in May killed between 50 and 80 people, including women and children. Daniele, we're looking at some pretty horrific images and the horror stories coming out within days of Mosul being liberated. The atrocities perpetrated by the ISIS, of course, are there for the world to see. But the alleged war crimes by some in the Iraqi administration are also beginning to raise eyebrows and make headlines. What are you picking up?
Well, Palki, I can say welcome to war. This is war. This is what war does, unfortunately. War is not a gentleman's agreement. War is a dirty moment in human life. So human rights are the first victim of wars, the first philosophical victim of wars. We have to understand that the major problem that Iraq now is facing, is that its soldiers are mainly Shia, and they are very angry, and perhaps comprehensibly so. They have been fighting for months. They have been witnessing the Islamic State committing atrocities, and this is now their way, their moment, of course, in their mindset to take revenge. But the problem is that this is absolutely wrong, and the government should immediately try to stop whatever human rights violation by the army is happening. Because these people who are getting caught within the fighting might not be actual member of the Islamic State, might be suspected, but suspicion is not enough to proceed to a sentence. There is the need of a fair trial, the need of justice. So this is fundamental, because if this doesn't happen, in the Sunni heart, a sentiment of revenge will keep growing and growing throughout the years, and they will reorganize again, and they will fight again against the Shia, which they perceive, the Shia militias, the Al-Hashdi Shabi, which you called Popular Mobilization Unit, but also the federal police, and also part of the Iraqi army, which is now largely controlled by Shia organization. So these kind of human rights violations, which are definitely and continuously happening, needs to be stopped immediately by the Iraqi government. The Iraqi government needs to talk to the army and to tell them that there is no free hand to do such things, because this will lay the foundation of further sectarian conflicts in the years to come. And this is the last thing that a country like Iraq, which has been at war for 14 years now, need.
Right, and I remember you telling us last week that you spoke to some people, and the predominant sentiment was that of revenge. They wanted revenge for the lives lost, for the loved ones lost. And then you look at images like these. So as unfortunate as it sounds, would it be fair to say that the flaring up of sectarian conflict is a foregone conclusion given the situation, and no matter who is firing, the person at the receiving end is usually a civilian?
Definitely yes, definitely yes. And we have also to understand that, unfortunately I have to say so, because the Iraqi army undeniably fought this war boots on the ground, and they paid a huge cost. They lost many men. It means that Iraqi families lost their sons on the battlefield against the Islamic State, which is perhaps one of the most brutal terrorist organizations active in the last perhaps 100 years. But the sentiment of revenge cannot find space during the reconstruction of peace of a country. What we are seeing now is what the people I met call revenge. Yes, but what if the person that the Iraqi army are killing are actually not member of the Islamic State? There is a civilian there who perhaps, but let's also use a little bit. Let's try to put ourselves in the situation. What if one day a terrorist organization like the Islamic State comes to our family and threatens us and tells us, if you don't work for us as a doctor, we will kill you? Will we be able to say no? Will we be able to resist? And if we won't, because we want to save our family, are we actually members of that terrorist organization or not? Do we deserve to be killed in cold blood like that? No, we don't. We will deserve a fair trial. Justice needs to be there, because otherwise, at the end of the days, when a sectarian conflict will again come back to Iraq, civilians will pay once again the price.
Unfortunately, no easy answers in a situation like this. Daniele Pagani, as always, thank you very much, and stay safe while you bring us those ground reports from Iraq. ISIS defeated, but there are still some pockets of resistance, and our focus on the search for those 39 Indians continues here on WION. We're taking a break on Gravitas. Ahead on the show, the dragon breathes fire again. Why is China holding live fire drills in Tibet amid the standoff in Doklam? We analyze that ahead.